Stories of witchcraft often talk about sabbats or witches' revels where the devil is in attendance and folk, normally crippled or bedridden, can dance and jig to the devil's music. Probably the most famous depiction of one of these sabbats comes from Burns in Tam O Shanter. We all know the scene. Tam, drunk from a night out in Old Ayr, comes across a sabbat taking place in Galloway Kirk. He recognises one of the women dancing there with the devil and in his stupor cries out, "Well done, cutty sark!" which of course alerts the revellers to his presence and forces him to flee on poor old Meg. Well, I'm here in the kirkyard in St John's, town of Dalry, and this gravestone here belongs to a family called Forrester. The gravestone, according to a former local minister, Dr. David Bartholomew, is conveniently situated where in the Old Kirk it was right by a window. The reason for that? Because Adam Forrester, who lived at Knocksheen on the Ayr Road out of Dalry, once peered in that window and spied a sabbat in full flow. The Glencairns was considered to be something of a hotbed of witch activity, and there are wee snippets of stories to be found about Glencairns witch beliefs in Alastair Penman's excellent book, Some Customs, Folklore and Superstitions of Galloway, about sabbats taking place here in Dalry. For example, one woman got herself into a great deal of trouble, but thankfully not fatal trouble, for secretly selling butter to purchase whisky for a sabbat taking place in Dalry. Her main crime was selling the butter without permission from her husband, but the fact that she took such a risk speaks a great deal about the appeal of these so-called sabbats. Going back to Adam Forrester now. Adam frequented the pub of a landlady called Lucky Hare, whom he doted on. One night, on returning from the pub through the kirkyard, he came across a sabbat in full swing and spied in through the kirk window. He saw the devil himself there playing fiddle and lots of local folk he knew dancing to the devil's tunes. Then he spied Lucky Hare herself and got so excited he shouted out, "We'll dance it, Lucky Hare, you'll no deny this the morn." The witches poured out of the kirk and chased him over the ford of the River Ken, then up Waterside Hill as he rode as fast as he could for home at Knocksheen. When his horse could no longer run fast enough, he leapt off and scored a circle in the hillside with the tip of his sword to keep the witches out. When I was a teenager at school here, we walked to that score, which could still be seen. Today, and particularly in the height of summer, you can't really see it. Anyway, it's a familiar tale. Tam O Shanter was written in 1791, but the events described in Adam Forrester's tale predate that by 100 years. The reason for this similarity is quite simple though, because the tale of Adam Forrester was one of many collected by local doctor Robert Trotter, whose father, also Robert Trotter, had been friendly with Burns and told him the story of Adam Forrester. How much truth is there in Adam's story? He lived here in Dalry during the times of the Covenanters and during Graham of Claverhouse's reign of terror in the Glencairns. One of the things Claverhouse did to prevent any unauthorised worship was to occupy the Old Kirk here. He stabled horses here and apparently had parties in the kirk itself. Perhaps Adam, drunk and disorientated, witnessed one of these parties, and perhaps it was not old Nick on the fiddle but Claverhouse. It's certainly interesting to think how these old tales that we think we know evolved in the first place. Now, all that's left of the Old Kirk is the Kenmure Aisle, where the Gordons of Kenmure Castle were buried, and this stone here, which hints at the spot where Adam spied a Witches Sabbat.